You're welcome back. Now, in many ways, my next guest is a man of numbers. He spent 3 years as a member of the European Parliament. He's been a member of Dáil Éireann for just 4 months, but in his campaigning history, he's been arrested 5 times. Would you welcome, please, Paul Murphy, TD.
It's 7 o'clock.
They're interesting numbers, aren't they? When they all add up. But you're welcome to the programme. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Before we get into the politics, let's talk about the person, because we see a lot of you in a political environment, but not in the personal. So let's get a little bit of your own background. You're from what part of Dublin?
I'm from Goatstown.
Yeah. And tell me a little bit about the house you grew up in.
Yeah, normal enough, middle class upbringing. 1 brother, 1 sister. Did well in school. Went to UCD, did law in UCD.
Yeah. Did more than law. You came first in your class.
I did.
Which is rather impressive. Was it a political house?
No, not particularly. I'd say there were political discussions in the sense that, like a lot of families, people have opinions and argue about things, be it politics or culture or whatever. And so there would have been discussion in my house, but certainly not linked to any one political party, and not a socialist house in particular.
Because you were quite young when your father passed away, isn't that right? How old were you?
11.
11, and that would have had an impact on you, no doubt.
Yeah, of course.
In what sense?
Well, I don't know. I suppose it was hard for my mother, for any mother, any parent, mother or father, bringing up their kids on their own. That's a difficult situation for someone, and I think it's just that creates an environment in a house whereby you have one parent, and you understand that there's a pressure on one parent alone. But yeah,
that's the world that you lived in. There was talk reading about you, there was talk of Fine Gael in your family. Is that the case? Is there?
Yeah, not in my immediate family. I mean, it's like people will say your family's Fianna Fáil.
Yeah.
I mean,
but I'm not
some
of my socialist TD,
Sure, no.
I suppose that's the...
Yeah, no, but some of my, in the sense that, like, it doesn't say anything about your politics, but I think some of my dad's brothers would be Fine Gael. Maybe 1 or 2 of them. I don't think it's some big Fine Gael family.
Yeah.
And I was never aware of that, actually, prior to becoming an MEP, and then some people saying, oh, it turns out you're actually a Fine Gaeler.
Yeah.
And I've betrayed my blue shirt roots, apparently.
Of course, you don't have any, as far as you're concerned. So what drew you towards socialism and the Socialist Party? Because as you say, you were in law in UCD, and then you obviously got your interest piqued politically by something somewhere along the way.
Yeah, like a fair number of people, I would have become political quite young, as a teenager.
Yeah.
In particular, when I was like 15, 16, what would have been happening around the world, you had big protests against the IMF, against the WTO, against the World Bank, kind of anti-globalization, anti-capitalist protests. And that would have shaped my political outlook.
Right.
And like at the time, what they were about were like unfair trade practices. It was about unjust debt. It was about austerity in places like Latin America. Yeah. Some of the things that have now come to Europe then were kind of very present in Latin America, and would have been a radicalising factor, and then reading things and beginning to describe myself as a socialist.
And you felt that this was where your dreams and ideologies lay?
Yeah, in a sense I felt that, if I could do things to make this country, this society, our continent, our world, a better place, a less unjust place, a place where you don't have so much poverty, where you don't have war, where you don't have just the misery that people, forget about this country for even one moment and think about the 2 billion people in the world who survive on less than $2 a day. So they're the kind of things that drove me to say, let's try and change this.
So what age are you?
Now, 31.
31, because that puts it into a context in terms of when that was happening, at what age you were at the time. You went on, of course, then to work with Joe Higgins, probably up until recently the most famous, if not the only socialist TD in Ireland for a long time.
Bertie Ahern apparently was a socialist as well.
So they say, or so he said. And then you ended up in Europe with him. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so when we didn't go into the European election campaign in 2009 thinking we were going to win, and we won because the crisis had hit. People were being radicalised, moving to the left, and so we won. That was the first MEP seat we had. And so I moved over to Brussels whenever Joe got elected to work on setting up our European office in the European Parliament, to do all of that. And then in 2011, when Joe was elected back into the Dáil, I took over as MEP.
You were co-opted as an MEP, okay.
And so that was some experience.
Yeah.
Again, a difficult experience in the sense that, all of a sudden you're in the Parliament, like, you know, debating with all these people who are, you know, establishment figures, etc. But it was a very good time to be an MEP and a very good time as socialist to have an MEP because the massive crisis of capitalism within Europe and like massive austerity being waged in Ireland and Greece and Portugal. And so like one of the main things we tried to do was say, OK, let's have solidarity of working people right across Europe. The idea of fighting for a different type of Europe, a Europe not built for the 1%, for the bankers, for the bondholders, but for the 99%.
So you came out of the European project, if you like. You ran for the general election. You didn't get elected that time. You ran for the Euros, and you didn't get elected that time. And then, of course, when Brian Hayes, Fine Gael, became an MEP, you took the by-election seat. Did you want to be a TD? Did you dream of being a TD? Did you want to walk the corridors of Leinster House all year?
Never. So I still don't dream of that.
So what are you doing there then?
Well, because I'm a socialist activist.
Right.
I'm an activist, and I think we can fight to fundamentally change the society.
Right.
And it so happened that events have happened in my life, like going over to work with Joe and then taking over from Joe because it made sense at that time, and then the by-election happened. Events have happened that have propelled me as a socialist activist into playing a particular type of role at this stage, which is being in the Dáil. But it's not like I never had any ambition to be a TD or an MEP or anything like that. But I think, can I play a role in assisting, like the water charges struggle concretely now, in being a TD? Is it a good platform to assist struggles of people? It is, and I think that's how we can use it.
And part of the reason you're here tonight is because you've made quite a name for yourself as part of a very different type of protesting that's been happening in recent months. We'll talk about obviously the Joan Burton protest, which of course became such a talking point in this country. Let's take a little reminder of that protest and we'll have a chat about it in a second.
A tense standoff in Jobestown today as the angry mood against water charges spilled over. The Taoiseach was attending a higher education ceremony, but when she left, her car was hemmed in by around 100 protesters. Dozens of Garda reinforcements arrived along with the Garda helicopter and the public order unit. This escalated the tension.
If they withdraw the public order unit, do we agree to let her go?
Then the unit agreed to step aside, in return for protesters agreeing to slowly march in front of the car to let her out. After 2.5 hours, some confusion as Gardaí surrounded the Taoiseach and physically transferred her to another car, with some protesters giving chase.
Was that a mistake to do what happened to the Taoiseach that day?
I don't think it was a mistake for me as a public representative elected on the basis of opposing water charges to join in that protest. That was effectively spontaneously organised by residents the night before and then grew. If I was organising that protest, or if the AAA was organising that protest, it would have been a different sort of protest. I mean, it was a messy protest. It's not your ideal situation of how a protest should be organised. I'd say it was messy, and I'd say...
would you say it was ugly?
Well, I wouldn't use the word
Would
ugly.
you not?
I think afterwards, which was conflated by independent newspapers in particular, afterwards there were ugly scenes. I mean, there's a picture that was used again and again.
Can we just talk about that? Don't mind other newspapers, because I'm just going to deal with what I just saw, or what everyone at home just saw, which was, you know, the Taoiseach, the Deputy Prime Minister of the country, trapped in a car for 2 hours against her will. Is that acceptable?
She wasn't trapped in her car.
Well, she wasn't going anywhere fast, Paul.
No, but she left. I mean, she moved from one car to the other, right? But the point is...
Did I not just see you with a bullhorn saying, shall we release her or not? If you say such a thing, that suggests that she needs to be released from somewhere. Okay. Therefore, she was not in a voluntary position to move.
Just that this quote and this clip has been used again and again and again, right?
Was it made up?
No, but the context of it has been explained again and again and again. And I don't really believe you don't know the context, because I explained it so many times. And this is a conscious attempt by the media to demonise anti-water charges.
A lot
so
of
the context
may not have seen as much as...
No problem, but you choose to use the clip. But the context that I've explained multiple times is that the Gardaí had explicitly asked me, and if this ever goes to trial, we can find the guard responsible, had asked me to put that question to the crowd.
Yes.
The Gardaí wanted to de-escalate the situation, and they chose to talk to me as a public representative, and so that's what I did.
Do we need to get into semantics about the choice of words? Do we want to release the Taoiseach from this? Am I missing something here?
But it's you that has introduced this particular quote,
you
right?
said it, Paul.
Sure, but I'm explaining that I said it because the Gardaí.
Are you saying that the guards forced words into your mouth that you didn't want to say that?
No, that the guards asked me to communicate that message to the protesters. I wasn't fully in charge of everything that was happening in the protest, and I was trying to play a role in having a disciplined protest and to bring the protest to an end at a certain stage. That's what I was doing, and that's what the clip actually demonstrates.
Let's not get lost on that. Do you think, just quickly again, I'm really curious to you as a public representative, do you think it's appropriate that the Taoiseach, who I think it's fair to say most parties who would look at that felt intimidated, regardless of your politics, that it was not a pleasant situation for anyone to be in for 2 hours. Do you think that was a mistake?
No. I've said that it's not a mistake. But I tell you what...
If it happened tomorrow, would you roll with it?
Let's take it... Right, let's put it in its context. Because what the media wants to do is just take these individual incidents, right, and you can show another clip and you can say what happened here. Yeah, but the context is, right, of communities being ravaged. Yeah. Because of austerity. The context is of broken promises. If you listen to what was shouted at Joan Burton, overwhelmingly what was shouted was traitor. Because people, Jobestown is a traditionally Labour Party area. Yeah. People voted for Labour and then they betrayed them. They cut child benefit, they're imposing water charges, they're cutting loan parents. And so people are very, very angry.
It sounds like I think most right-minded people would understand that anger, Paul, to be honest with you. But I still am having trouble with you possibly justifying, and people may have trouble with you justifying, the intimidation of a person.
I'm not justifying any intimidation or anything like that.
No, but you're condoning it.
No, what I'm justifying and condoning is a peaceful sit-down protest behind a car of the Deputy Prime Minister that has happened multiple times in this country without people having dawn raids in the morning, without 23 people arrested at this stage. And I'm condoning and justifying and supporting a slow protest in front of the Taoiseach's car. There's been multiple attempts, multiple incidents whereby Taoiseach, Charlie Haughey, Bertie Ahern have been stopped in their cars. And nothing has ever happened like this. And it's not an accident. It's happening because the establishment is scared, because they want people to get back in their box. Because that's what it expresses. It isn't pure, it isn't clean, it isn't simple.
People aren't that stupid. And I think that, to be honest with you, people felt that this was a different tone to public protest, that it had taken on this very ugly hue that involved this sort of catcalling, shouting, jeering at people that, you know, may or may not deserve such a thing. Any human being, let alone a politician.
But people don't deserve... There's people right now locked up, right, for 1 month and for 2 months, 5 people. And the only reason they're locked up is for breach of an injunction whereby they've gone within 20 metres of a water meter installation. Yeah. In my opinion, that's much more serious than someone calling Joan Burton a traitor, or than Joan Burton being held somewhere for 2.5 hours. I mean, where Joan Burton was that day, just around the corner, there was a couple who I later spoke to who were living in their car who were homeless. Do you know, that's what they've done in this society. And then the media is focused on, was she called a traitor here? Was she stopped in her car for 2 hours? It misses the picture here, which is like the structure of violence, the destruction of communities by their policies.
If you had orchestrated things a little better and in a little more civilised manner, you mightn't have made a martyr of the Taoiseach, and we wouldn't be talking about it like this.
If I had orchestrated, this wouldn't have happened. I didn't orchestrate. That's the point. Yeah. Right, so I am aware this protest is happening. I'm in favour of people protesting against it, but we genuinely did not organise it. We arrive on the scene, and what role do I play? I attempt to put a shape on the protest, to put a discipline on the protest. I introduce chants into the protest in order to have a more effective type of protest.
You were arrested anyway as a result of what happened there. Obviously you would have felt that was utterly unjustified. Tell us a little bit about the morning of your arrest.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shocking experience in the sense that, you know, you're half awake, 5 to 7 in the morning, and we get a ring on the door. You open the door and there's 6 Gardaí at the door, and they push their way in and tell you that you're being arrested under suspicion of false imprisonment of Joan Burton and her assistant.
Right.
And then I was in the Garda station for maybe 8.5 hours. I was questioned for 4 hours. Yeah. Again and again, based on media transcripts and footage from RTE, YouTube, etc.
Whoever, yeah.
All to try and stand up the idea, which they've been talking to people in the community and questioning people with a view to pinning me as being responsible for a protest that I didn't organise, and trying to say that I'm responsible for what's apparently the false imprisonment of Joan Burton. I mean, if that's false imprisonment, well then anyone who participates in any protest and gets in the way of cars, as happens all the time, are guilty of false imprisonment. I mean, it's some stretching of the term, and it's very serious, because the maximum sentence for false imprisonment is life in prison. And obviously, Like, I don't think that's going to happen.
I'd be very shocked if that was to
But that's the kind of threat that hangs over. And there's a whole community now in Jobestown.
But is this
Hundreds
not,
participated in that
not
protest, and people are scared.
Do you not get some class of, forgive the choice of words, but thrill out of being arrested? And I say that on the basis that it's manna from heaven in some ways, because suddenly you find yourself as the top of the media tree in terms of whatever programme you're going, including this. You get all the attention you need. It brings all the attention to the cause you fight, and chances of you spending any time in prison are slim to none. And yet you get all this coverage.
Firstly, I mean, I have no personal interest in media coverage. I really don't. You know, I don't find it like a pleasant experience to be going on and talking about your childhood. Do you know what I mean? That's not what I want to do.
And yet you're here.
Because we use media appearances to try to get the political points across about how we can defeat water charges through non-payment.
But you say I don't like media, yet you're always in the media. I don't like politics, yet you're in Leinster House. I don't like. You know what do you want?
Because I'm trying to do the best I can to try and change the society for the better. Right? And I think that I can do that, including by using media appearances. But it's not that I have I don't have a personal like for being in the media whatsoever. But it's all a platform to get ideas across. And like, did I like being arrested? No. I had real things to do that day. I had people to try and assist. I had homeless cases to try and assist. I had, work to do that actually would make a difference for my constituents. There was a guy who was trying to contact me about a particular case, and he wrote to his TD, his Fine Gael. He would traditionally be connected to Fine Gael, and he wrote to them saying, he's outraged because he was meant to talk to me and he couldn't because I was sitting. So really, I have better things to be doing than sitting in a guard station.
We need to talk about the Michael D. Higgins protest, let's call it that for the sake of it. A quick reminder of that too, in terms of the nature and the tenor of the modern protest.
Why do we need to talk about it?
Well, we'll have a look at it and you tell me.
But it has nothing to do with me.
Well, I think it's self-explanatory.
But it's nothing to do with me.
Let's roll the tape and the people can decide.
You little media parasite!
Push me! I'm nowhere near him! Put your hands on me! I'm nowhere near any car!
So, do you approve of that protest?
No, I condemned it repeatedly. So I don't know why you want to talk about it, because I've been in the media repeatedly condemning the protest, right? And so what's being attempted is to link that protest and the Jobestown protest and to link them somehow to me. But I wasn't there, I don't approve of it, I didn't agree with it, I condemned it repeatedly. Right. So, do you know what I mean? If you had Micheál Martin in here, would you be having him on and saying, we have to talk about this?
Well, when Micheál Martin comes on, we'll decide what we ask him at that time. But I've got you here, so I'm going to talk to you about these things. You're anti-water protest, you're part of the water protest movement, which is fine. Are all the people that we saw in that tape and the jeering that went on, those people that did that, you are denying them in public tonight, saying that they were wrong? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely, and it's not the first time. I've said it repeatedly.
Yeah, but I suppose we're just clarifying
that they were wrong. But I don't see it. I need to clarify it in the sense that I was all over the media saying it was wrong. But what happened again, and the media is a factor here. Yeah. Does the media have an agenda? Independent newspapers. It's owned by Dennis O'Brien.
Yeah, but we're not.
Dennis O'Brien owns GMCC.
Yeah, why don't you talk to me about
But the point is,
but the reason he's not here. But the reason I work in RTE.
But the reason we're talking about this is because of an inaccurate headline in a newspaper which attempted to portray that I supported that. That's how this became an issue,
Paul,
Ryan.
I'm being straight with you here. I just saw this clip. I was curious to know what you thought of that. I know you're out and about in the media a lot of time, but a lot of the people who watch this programme don't follow your career with the intensity that maybe some people closer to you would do.
Myself, because I'm in it.
Right, okay. So that's what I was just going. So that particular tape we saw, and the people involved in that are all they're persona non grata as far as you're concerned.
What they did there was wrong. It was stupid. It doesn't assist in any way the anti-water charges movement. Okay. That's clear.
Did you have sympathy for the president?
Yeah, in the sense that when people I have sympathy for anyone who's screaming abuse at. I'm sure he's well able for it, do you know what I mean? I think he's in the car and he's gone.
Yeah. But do you think he's a legitimate target?
I think people have a right to protest any political figure. And I don't think anybody has actually proposed, making it illegal to protest the president or anybody else.
Do you think there's a president, and this got a lot of comment at the time, the president of this country stands a little bit removed from the political system in the sense of his office and the neutrality of the office and the apolitical nature of it?
That's really a formalism, you know. It's not the reality. I mean, if you think of the presidential election, it's a political election. It's a political election of a certain type. People talk in a certain way. But Michael D. Higgins, he stood on a platform of criticising austerity, criticising the impacts of austerity. He has a record of fighting for people, of standing up for human rights. So it is a political office, and I think people do have a right to protest. They should protest in the correct way, in a peaceful, disciplined way.
If President Higgins was opening a library tomorrow in Galway, you'd say to people, go and protest at that against him?
No, I wouldn't.
About the water?
I wouldn't say that, and you can't draw that inference from what I just said. But I'd say if people... I wouldn't, right? Because there's not much point in protesting against the president, because he doesn't have sufficient power. But if they decided to protest, right, I'd say, well, they have a right to do it. And I'd say they have a right to do it as long as they do it in a peaceful, disciplined way, etc., etc. So you can defend someone's right to do something without meaning that you advocate it. So I defend the right of people to protest against any political figure.
Would you break a court order injunction?
It would depend on what the court order injunction is. But yeah, I would. I mean, the injunction that we have at the moment is an injunction. To be clear, it's an incredible infringement on people's democratic rights and civil liberties. It says you cannot go within 20 metres of a water meter installation. So if necessary, I would break that.
Okay, so that takes us to yesterday and the people who were incarcerated for coming within the 20 metres of the people trying to put the water machines in. One of whom I believe was the gentleman we heard on that heckle against the president. You support him?
Well, I've just criticised him for everything that he said there.
Yeah.
I don't think he should be jailed. Do you think he should be in jail for a month?
Did you support him in court yesterday?
Yeah, I don't think he should be in jail for a month because he stood within 20 metres. So I disagree with what he did there.
Yes.
If what he did there was a crime, well then let there be. But no, he should not be.
But there are a lot of...
And the other four, a woman and 3 other men, including a 60-year-old who's currently out of the country, should they be in jail because of standing against water meters? They don't want the imposition of water meters. The only purpose of the water meters is to get the water charges.
Yeah.
You have massive opposition. In these areas, you're not talking about protests like that.
Yeah.
You're talking about protests of hundreds of people but effectively protesting.
If it's 20 metres to be, the proximity, why don't they protest 21 metres away and avoid having all this waste of, guarded time, legal time, their own time? And not have to spend time doing in prison watching,
Because it's a question of what the state is saying, and in my opinion, the media is saying, is that you have the right to protest, you have the right to march up, and this judge said this, that you have the right to kind of march up and down with your banners and your placards. But you don't have the right to effective protest. And that's why people need to be within the 20 metres to stop water meter installation. Because what GMC Sierra is doing is imposing meters on people who don't want them. We think people have the right to protest.
Do you have any sympathy for the men and women who are putting the meters in?
I do. I don't think they should be put in that situation by their employer or by Irish Water, which contracts their employer.
And just looking at the things that you're anti, and what I'm curious to know what you're pro, because you're anti-water charges and anti-property tax and you're anti-bin charges and you're anti-bailout and you're anti-college fees and you're anti-austerity. So where is the pro in Paul Murphy?
I'm pro-socialism. I'm pro taking power in this country out of the hands of the bankers, of the bondholders, of the Dennis O'Briens, and taking power into the hands of the majority, right? Which means running society through public investment, through public ownership of our natural resources, which have been given away to Shell and Statoil,
and if the
key sections of
industry.
If
the law doesn't suit you, break it.
Well, you asked me what I'm for, so I'm explaining what a socialist society would look like. It would mean a decent home for everybody. It would mean decent education. It would mean decent healthcare. It would mean putting people's needs before profit. That's what I'm for, and all those things that go with it.
You must have been so excited when the Greeks elected the government they elected, and then you must have been so disappointed to watch the 9 o'clock news to realise that, despite all their promises, they are having to play ball. I mean, they went in saying we're going to give them 2 fingers, and now they've come out with their hand out.
Well, it's an ongoing battle. I mean, what's been attempted, it's incredible, and our government is completely part of it, is an incredible blackmail by the European establishment, the Troika, ECB, etc., demanding that the election results in Greece are annulled. Right? The people voted against austerity and saying, you can't have that. Otherwise, we're going to force you out of the euro. That's what the ECB is saying.
The Greek government signed up to a deal tonight, Paul.
We don't know what's in the deal, right? Well, if they signed up to implement any austerity, then that's a mistake. If they've just bought time until Monday, and then for later on, well then, that's part of the negotiations. But the Syriza election is very, very important, regardless of any mistakes that Syriza may make, because it opens the idea that there is an alternative to austerity. There's been this mantra for years and years and years, decades, and now you've a left government elected, and it does give people
It just
hope that things will be
feels
different.
to me that they were a bit neutered tonight, but we'll talk about that another time if we can. Quickly, before I say goodbye, Paul, thinking about the arrests and the incarcerations in prison yesterday, would you say they're a help or a hindrance to your cause?
That depends on what response takes place now. People have to respond and say, this is just not okay.
So what do you propose?
So tomorrow there's a major protest,
Yeah.
national protest at 2 o'clock at Central Bank in Dublin. It will march to Mountjoy Prison. And people need to come out now. Anybody who defends the right to protest. I mean, we have 2 weeks of dawn raids in Tallaght, 5 people jailed. It's a very, very serious attack that's going on.
Can you guarantee that future marches will be peaceful and less belligerent than the ones we've seen of late?
Well, if you think of all the major protests that have taken place in town, they've all been entirely peaceful, entirely disciplined, less trouble than you would have at a GAA match or anything else. So can isolated incidents take place at small protests or whatever? Certainly it's possible. I can't guarantee that won't happen forever. But I know the vast, vast, vast majority of people who engage in protest engage in the right sort of protest, but do engage in effective protest. And in order to engage in effective protest, sometimes civil disobedience is necessary. The most important source will be non-payment. What will sink Irish water is the majority of people refusing to pay the water charges, and I think that will happen. And we have to build for it.
What figure? I think the number I have in my head for those who have signed up for Irish Water is 64%. Would that be right?
That's what they're claiming.
That leaves your notion of a majority a little bit.
Not at all, right? That's after. That was the third deadline, if you remember. It was all the propaganda and everything. They said, oh no, it's actually just an administrative deadline and we'll have a new deadline. So they already have admitted that that's a very bad figure for them, right? But the opinion polls, what matters, registration is important, but what matters really is payment. The opinion polls say 4 in 10 intend to pay, 3 in 10 intend not to pay, and the others are in between. And we need to convince those others to join the boycott, and as many of the 4 in 10
It's going to be a fascinating few months ahead, I've no doubt about it. But thanks for coming in to see us tonight.
Right.
Paul Murphy, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Paul. Thank you.